I'm with Stephen Jafi from the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Now, Stephen, what is the Board of Deputies of British Jews?
Hi there. Thank you very much for this opportunity to explain what the Board of Deputies of British Jews is. It's a representative body for the Jewish community in the United Kingdom. It's over 250 years old, and every synagogue in the UK sends a deputy to the Board of Deputies. So it's like a little Jewish parliament where we discuss issues affecting the Jewish community in the UK today and internationally.
How is the relationship between Christians and Jews at the moment?
I think we're living in very interesting times indeed. I think there are Christians who are supportive of Israel, who are finding their voice, and this is something which I think is so hugely important. I think we saw it today at Faith Camp in terms of the encouragement that Christians can give. I know that the Deputy Ambassador who was speaking here earlier today is leaving. He's going back to London, hugely encouraged. I think that says so much about what is positive between what's going on between Christians and Jews in the UK today. But unfortunately, it's not the whole story. There are elements within the Christian church who are turning their back on Israel, who are seeking to isolate and boycott it and weaken it at a time when Israel is particularly vulnerable as to what's going on in the Middle East. So it's a very, very mixed picture. And the message that I really want to bring to people on the camp is get their voices heard. Let's hear positive Christian voices for Israel in the UK. It's so important.
Yeah, this boycott Israel movement seems to be growing stronger. Why is this just wrong?
I think it's negative. It's importing negativity to a conflict. I think people should positively engage right across the board between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Arabs. It's not about taking sides. It's not about bringing negativity into a region where there is so much negativity. There is positive work to be done in bringing Jews and Arabs together in peace initiatives, in reconciliation, in breaking down the barriers. If people in the UK, and Christians in particular, were to focus on positive things that they could do to help in the Middle East, that would be fantastic. To boycott is negative. It's taking sides. It has I believe, no contribution to make towards peace in the Middle East. And I think ultimately it impacts on the boycotters. If you are so consumed by negativity and hatred, I think that impacts on you as a person. So I would say it's wrong for the Middle East, and it's wrong for here in the UK as well.
Do you think the media is extremely biased against Israel, and why is that?
I think there is a consensus, if you like, a liberal consensus, if I can call it that Israel is the dominant power of the Middle East. You only have to look at the map to see how that's a very, very kind of misleading statement. But the idea that Israel is the regional bully and that other people are kind of being oppressed by Israel is something which I think is kind of accepted as norm by much of the media. And if you want to see bad things about Israel, you can find it. Israel is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the context of which this is all put in is one of Israel as the bully and the Arabs as the underdog. There is another side to the story. Israel is a country which is 9 miles wide at its narrowest point. It is a country of 8 million people surrounded by much, much bigger countries. So I believe that the media is giving a very distorted picture. I'm not saying everything in Israel is right or that they're broadcasting lies about Israel, but the context, I think, is often lacking in the UK media in how it deals with Israel.
Now, why has Israel been so successful over the last 67 years?
Well, it is successful, isn't it? It's not just that it's survived, it's actually thriving. So the Deputy Ambassador this morning made the point that when Israel was established, restored in 1948, the population was 600,000. Today, the population in that strip of land is 8 million. So that is a tremendous ingathering of Jewish exiles from around the world. Israel is successful in high tech in terms of exporting. It has in many ways an economy of a Western state. It has a democratic political system which makes it unique in the Middle East. So I think these are all contributing factors. The kind of the entrepreneurial style of Israeli society, I think, has contributed to the success of a state. It doesn't have oil, it didn't have natural resources. People had to make the best of it as they could, and they've made the best of it. And I think it is a tremendous lesson, I think, to the developing world, really, that Israel has a big part to play, I think, in things like agricultural technology and drip irrigation, desalination of water in parts of the world which is impacted by climate change. Israel is a successful country, and it has a message, I think, for the entire world.
Now, at the moment, Iran is the biggest threat to Israel. How is Israel going to deal with this nuclear deal that's been put on the table?
Well, I think it's a very concerning time. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it clear that this is not a good deal, it is a bad deal, and he's made the point that no deal is better than a bad deal. He said that this gives Iran two paths to a nuclear weapon. They can either cheat on the deal, and the methods of checking that are very, very inadequate, so that they can do that. Alternatively, they just have to wait 10 years and they'll become a nuclear power irrespective of this agreement. Israel is faced with an existential threat by this. When Iran says that it wants to wipe Israel off the map, Israel takes this seriously, and everything about Jewish history tells us that we have to take those threats seriously. Unfortunately, the West came to an agreement with Iran, irrespective of the fact that it is sponsoring terrorism around the world. As to what Israel will do, I don't know. I don't know what Netanyahu can do physically in terms of any military option, but at the moment the focus is on America and on the Congress, which we hope will reject the deal and force President Obama to reconsider and review the agreement. So Israel does not want war with Iran. I want to make that absolutely clear. We have no conflict with Iran, no territorial conflict, but we cannot have a situation where a state which says openly it wants to destroy Israel to have nuclear weapons.
Now, you have threats on every side: Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, fundamental Islam. Do you feel like God is in charge?
Well, I think he has to be, because if you think that Israel can survive that level of threat on its borders, it requires, I think, something supernatural. Israel has been invaded on 3 occasions by armies much bigger than it, yet it has survived. Israel has, as we've discussed, it hasn't just survived, it has thrived. And we talked about the various factors behind Israel's success, but ultimately I believe there's something beyond human enterprise here. There is, and well, God operates through human beings, but I think there is something beyond it, and I think you have to visit Israel to see that, to sense it. It's in the air, it's palpable. So yes, I do believe that there is a divine hand. That's my personal belief as an Orthodox Jew. Israel is also a very secular society. You bear that in mind as well. There are many Israelis who are not religious in outlook, but my personal belief would say yes, there is a divine power there that has safeguarded Israel, has allowed it to survive, to be a haven for Jewish people around the world, to be a light to the nations in terms of its spiritual values and in terms of its technological success.
Now, we hear a lot about anti-Zionism. Is anti-Zionism the new anti-Semitism?
Well, I believe that if you take the view that you wish to deny the Jewish people a state, that is profoundly anti-Semitic. If people looking at the Middle East today say they're anti-Zionist, they would rather that Israel didn't exist, then you're saying that the Jewish people should be a minority people in the Middle East. And you just have to look everywhere in the Middle East as to what that means. That means no future for the Jewish people in the Middle East. There is, in the surrounding countries, Christians, other minority groups, they are being martyred, they're being forced out. That would be the future in an anti-Zionist ideal world. The Jews would be stateless. The Jews would not have a government. The Jews would not have an army. There would be no difference then between the position of the Jews and the position that unfortunately many Christians find themselves across the Middle East. So I believe that anti-Zionism is, firstly, it's negative by its very name, but also its wish for the Jewish people is one of renewed persecution and no future whatsoever. So I have no qualms in saying that anti-Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism. It is extremely hostile towards the Jewish people and its best interests.
Is ISIS a threat to Israel at the moment? We've just heard that ISIS were threatening the Christians in Jerusalem and asking them to leave certain areas. Are they a threat to Israel?
Well, I think for many Palestinians, they're waking up to the fact that the main defense that they have against so-called Islamic State is actually the Israeli army. That is obviously a difficult thing for Arabs to accept, because clearly many of them are hostile to Israel. But in fact, it is the Israeli army which is the main defense, not just in Jerusalem, but I would say in what's called the Palestinian territories as well. The presence of the Israeli army beyond the so-called Green Line, which marks pre-1967 Israel and the West Bank, that is vital to Palestinian security as regards various Islamist groups, and it's not just so-called Islamic State. As you mentioned, we could talk about Al-Qaeda, which is on Israel's borders. So yes, I think it is a threat to Israel, but I think the Israeli army is a strong force to protect the Jewish people, to protect the Arabs in Israel as well, and I believe they'll be up to the challenge of the Islamic State.
How can Christians pray for Israel?
Well, I think God told us that. He said very specifically as a command, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, which is an interesting command, isn't it? It's saying pray for peace in the city of Jerusalem. Peace is something that all peoples who live in that region need. It's not a sectarian prayer. It is a prayer for peace for all people. I would ask Christians to bear that in mind in their prayers. It is hugely important. I believe that they will be blessed by those prayers, and I believe that the people of Israel and the surrounding countries will be blessed as well. So I want to say thank you to those Christians who in prayer groups for Israel, in their churches, or as individuals take time to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Should Christians be coming to Israel and supporting the nation by coming?
I think it's very, very important, both for the Christians themselves and for the people of the region. In an economic sense, tourism is very important, both to Arabs and Jews. But I believe the impact of physically standing with the people of Israel is very important, that they see that they're not a pariah nation. Actually, people are queuing up to visit. And I think it's very important for the people who do make pilgrims to Israel. I believe that any Jew or Christian who's rooted in Tanakh, which is the Hebrew scripture, will come away from that visit a changed person. And, that is something which is irreplaceable. There is no other land in the world that you could actually say that. I think it is something very unique to the land of Israel.
Well, Stephen, thank you for sharing about Israel.
Well, thank you very much for this interview. I have had such a wonderful day today at Faith Camp. I can't even begin to tell you how encouraging it is. I'm going back to London a very happy man indeed. And thank you to everyone at Faith Camp, both for the invitation to the Deputy Ambassador and myself to speak today, and for the way that we experienced the friendship and hospitality today. We will not forget it, and we hope it will lead to us going from strength to strength. Thank you very much indeed.